for just a short time this evening, just to kind of pop on here and answer some gardening questions, maybe add some inspiration, and even give you some tips and tricks to help you along the way in the journey of building the best garden ever. Hey, why do we garden? It's a physical outdoor leisure activity, of course, that allows us to grow our own food, to enjoy the beauty of maybe perennial plants, to maybe help pollinators, to maybe even just get our kids to inspire to eat better. That's why we garden. For those that don't know me, my name is indeed Frank Ferragini. I'm a 4-time best-selling garden author that got the nickname Frankie Flowers. You can see me on Monday through Fridays on City TV's Breakfast Television, where I'm there to be wild about weather, give you the forecast, and also get really passionate about plants. So here we are, the long weekend. Let's hope that you had a fantastic long weekend in the month of August as we're traveling through the summer season quite quickly. And with that, it's harvest time in the garden. And when it comes to harvest time in the garden, you have to be on top of it. You have to be out there to make sure that you're picking beans on time, that you're actually doing everything that you can on time, and that you're really harvesting things when they're ready and ripe. And just a reminder, you see all these videos with the biggest zucchini that's out there. Well, really, we don't want our zucchinis to get that big because they'll actually almost become woody. We actually want that zucchini to be almost the same shape and size that you see in the grocery store. With your beans, you want to pick your beans while they're still tender. You don't want them to get old. That's out there. Your tomatoes, you want them to go vine ripen. And if you just kind of take them and twist them on the vine, they should actually gently pull off the vine. So I hope you guys are having a good season so far and that garden season's helping you out there. I just want to give a little shout out right now this evening to Carolyn. Good evening to you as well, Carolyn. For those that may be joining for the first time, you can just pop a question in the comment or comment on anything you like. Maybe share and let me know what's been successful in your garden, what this year has failed you, what this year are you disappointed on, what this year you still yet to look forward to. What's your favorite flower in the garden right now? And if that comes to me, as I look in my backyard, it has to be my limelight hydrangeas. My limelight hydrangeas right now are that beautiful white color. So they went from a chartreuse green into a lovely white. And then as we go a little bit further on to the season, they're going to give me pink. But the amount of bloom power that they give is amazing. I love them so much that I actually planted a little lime lights in my front yard because I wanted something to give me a little bit of late summer color, but also just to be a little bit on the smaller side as well. This week, I'm going to be shooting with Amanda, and I'm going to give you my faves when it comes to hydrangeas and show you some different options that you can grow, and also a little bit about some pruning tips when it comes to hydrangeas as well. We got another shout out this evening as well to Kudu the Bear, the Crafter. Hello. I like that. That's amazing. Hello. Kota Bear the Crafter. Kota Bear the Crafter. I have to check you out there. We got another little recommendation this evening. Pick your fruit before the animals get them. I caught our cardinal eating my beans. Ah, yes. If you're wondering what the heck's eating your tomatoes, and if it's some of your lower fruit on tomatoes, there's everything from squirrels to chipmunks to even sometimes if your lower fruit of your plant are being eaten, it could also possibly be mice and or rats. So just be aware of that as well. We got another question this evening from Christine. Hey, Christine. When should Sharon of Rose or Rosa Sharon be trimmed? This hibiscus family, beautiful plant that's flowering right now, right after it finishes its bloom period. So as we get into later fall, they'll be finished their blooms. And at that time, you can prune them. Always when you're pruning, as a general rule of thumb, where you're not going to fail, is we prune back to about 1/3 of its overall growth. We remove any deadwood at that same time. And then any branches that kind of grow inward, we want to kind of thin those guys out. So as you lop the top, you cut the top, you kind of thin the centers to create some nice airflow to improve the health of your Rosa Sharon. So I hope that helped. Hey, I just want to show everybody as well. Hey, I'm just going to do a question because my buddy Kota Bear, the crafter's there. Hey, who do I determine if my orchid is dying or if its blooms are done? Or how do I determine? How do you determine when your orchid's blooms are finished? Well, orchid blooms will last up to months on time. That flower stem that you see there, sometimes you can leave it on there and actually see a side shoot that will come off it that can create some additional blooms. Often what I like to do is to remove the flower stem. And generally when those flower petals start to drop, that's when the blooms are done. When that flower stem starts to brown on the brown tip, on the tip of the stem, it starts to brown. That is at the point where you want to remove it. So I would really recommend, I see that you're on YouTube, go to my YouTube page, which you're on right now. You'll see Orchids 101, and they'll tell you everything you need to know on how to get that orchid to rebloom out there as well. Christine's saying thank you. Thank you for joining this evening as well. We got another question out there from Carolyn. Wasn't very happy with my garlic harvest this year. It wasn't as big as it was in past years. Not sure why. So garlic, a couple of reasons. So the bigger, like when we're going to plant garlic, if we have a larger clove, generally larger cloves are going to produce larger garlic. So when you're going to purchase your seed garlic, make sure that you look at that seed garlic, and that's what you're going to be getting in a few weeks. And you want to make sure that you're planting the largest cloves. Those are the ones that are going to give you the biggest garlic. Secondly, in order for that garlic to size up, we need moisture. We had a fairly wet July, but the downfall is we actually had some hot temperatures. So that can also, some of the hard net, colder climate garlics don't do well in the hot weather. So that could be another effect that's in it. I planted my garlic, for instance, I had some space. I planted by some larger trees, and I got small garlic this year. And following a lot of the different garden pages out there as well, I know a lot of people commented on smaller garlic. But the key to size up your garlic is when the scapes grow. So when you see that garlic growing, and you'll see like a little nodule on top of the little stems that we have, and then that spins, that's the scape. We want to cut underneath that nodule and remove that, and that'll put more energy to size up your bulb. If you didn't do that, you're not going to size up your bulb that's out there. Kota says, okay, thanks, no problem, Kota Bear, the crafter, of course. We got another question here this evening from Carol Jones. Hello from Quebec. My lupins are browning and leaves are curling, bugs. So your lupins, I'm assuming it's lupins, just by it's lupins, but it would probably be lupins. The reason why those are curling, guaranteed, it's heat stress. So you had heat warnings all this week in Quebec, even here in Ontario. So lupins is a plant that thrives where we have a warm day and a cooler night. But when we have warm days, warm nights, that's when we'll get the kind of stress on the plant, like a lupin. And that's where we'll kind of get that plant itself to brown and leaves to curl. The leaves curl can be by disease. Best thing to figure out if it's an insect is to actually go to those curling leaves. And what you'll do is you'll take that curling leaf. You'll get a white piece of paper like this. You'll set it down and you put it on your patio table, let's just say. And you take the leaf and you can either shake the leaf or pull the leaf apart or even pull the bloom apart. If you see insects running across, then we can determine what the insect is. Often when we have smaller insects that run across, those will be thrips, and then we can use something like Bug Be Gone to cure those. A great annual this year that I've been testing as one of my trials that has wonderful heat tolerance is Angelonia. So as our summers are getting warmer, we're going to have to be looking for plants that are more heat tolerant, and Angelonia has actually been very great. We got another comment here this evening. Debbie said I was going to ask the same question about my Rosa Sharon. Thanks, I have two. I was just in, I went to Two Sisters Winery yesterday for their event called Journey of Flavors. Fantastic event. Love Two Sisters Winery in Niagara-on-the-Lake. The amount of Rosa Sharon and also perennial hibiscus that I saw in bloom in Niagara-on-the-Lake is absolutely stunning. So right now, let's say that you're watching and you're a new gardener and you're thinking, I'm going to plant my whole front area with Rosa Sharon and the perennial hibiscus. Bad idea. And the reason being, they look amazing right now, but they look like complete crap in April, May, and even into June. They're just not that attractive a plant until they get in the bloom period. So what we want to do is we want to use a collection of plants that have good spring interests, some that have later spring, early summer their interest, and those that have summer interest, like I was just talking to you about my limelight hydrangeas, and those that need even the hibiscus a little bit later on. So we really want to make sure we're designing our garden in that way. So we got Shirley from Barrie. My peonies are really thick. How do I help with airflow if they don't bloom next year? So with your peonies, if they're really thick and they've been in that garden for several years, now is the time to selectively maybe do some dividing and transplanting. So dividing and transplanting is not only dividing to create more plants, but it's also thinning. And by going in there late this fall or even next spring, as soon as the eyes pop up, where you're going to actually remove some sections, put some soil down, you can pot those sections up and give them to friends or put them into other areas. That will actually not make it as thick and as dense, creating greater airflow and actually lead to a new lease of life to those plants that are out there. So if you haven't divided your peonies and you have, like, let's say a peony bed and you haven't divided them, in the last 3 years, they're going to need division. So that's what I would have there as well. So we got another question, Kota, my buddy, or whomever, Kota. I have some new flowers I bought this year, and they all bloom flowers that do not last long. Will they always do that? So, it's a great question, because when we talk about different types of flowers, there's annuals and perennials. So that perennial flower is something that's going to come back year after year. Often perennials, I describe them as a firework. So they bloom for a short period of time and then they're gone. Some have longer bloom periods. So that's where we want to look for perennials, like rudbeckia coneflowers have a longer bloom period. We want to look for those longer bloom periods, or we want a collection of perennials that are all at different flowering times. Annuals are something that we have to plant every year. However, annuals often give us a full flame, because all we need to do is to deadhead them, and they'll always push on more bloom, push on more bloom, push on more bloom. So what I often like to do is put a pocket of annuals in my perennial bed. So when my perennials are not blooming, I still have some interest with annuals that are there. So it depends. If it's a perennial, they can do that year after year, but we'll have to see which types that you have that are there. Christine, hi Christine. We moved into a new little house in March, and I've been pleasantly surprised with all the different flowers, all except the vines. How do we get rid of them, since cutting them back didn't really deter them? So the vines, and that could be Boston ivy, Virginia creeper, it could be trumpet vine. There's several different vines that are out there, and vines are very aggressive growers, vigorous growers. And the way to really kind of get them not to be so vigorous is you got to continually cut them back and remove, because the goal is we want to starve the roots. How do we starve the roots of a plant? Is we actually make sure that we remove foliage. And by doing that over time, we'll weaken that vine and it will eventually die out, but it's not going to be a quick fix. It could take a few years to kick those vines back. So you just got to be very persistent, stay on top of it. Any growth you see, continually to remove, cut back, remove, cut back, remove. And over time, you'll win the battle over those guys, but it does take some time. I have a noxious weed in my front yard that just kind of became there in the last little bit. And I'm going to be doing a video on that weed called knotweed. And it's something too that it's going to be a long journey for me to get rid of that piece of crap. That's what I call it. Rosa Sharon. We got another question. Trim. Once again, prune after bloom. If you're watching me, you'll know I say that. If you prune things after they flower, you're never going to fail. With outdoor plants, prune after bloom. Rosa Sharon, prune after bloom. So Rosa Sharon, late summer flowering. We're going to be pruning those into the late fall, early winter, or you can even prune in spring. We got Janice. Hi, Janice Bobanus, Baramara Fofanus. Hi, Frankie. My serviceberry trees got powdery mildew every single year. Anything I can do. So you can spray a fungicide. It's not really going to do too much now, but the key is next spring, what I would really recommend for you. The first thing is this fall, when all the serviceberry drops its leaves, try to clean up around the base, do a really good job at removing all the leaves that are fallen. And hopefully what we can do is get that pathogen, the fungal spores on those leaves out of there. So we remove those out. Next spring, we're going to use a dormant spray kit. The dormant spray kit, we're going to use that and treat with it when our plants are still in dormancy, but the temperature is just going to start to warm up. So that generally is about mid-April, early April to mid-April. That dormant spray kit is a combination of lime sulfur and also a combination of horticultural oil. The lime sulfur is something that's going to rid or reduce the amount of overwintering disease. However, I will say to you, the reason why your serviceberry has been repetitively getting powdery mildew is mostly related to our hot, humid, wet conditions that we've had over the last few years. So what I would do is rake all those up this fall, apply the dormant spray kit in the spring, and hope that we have a drier summer season with cooler nights, and we shouldn't have as much powdery mildew that's out there. We got Dorothy. Dorothy, how you doing today? Should I wait till the end of August to transplant flowers and hydrangeas? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are transplanting and moving plants when they're not going to be stressed. What causes stress on plants? Hot, dry conditions. Hot days, hot nights, dry conditions. That's stressful. This week we have temperatures of 20 degrees. So if you're around to water, that's the other key is you got to make sure you water. You can maybe do like I would move like hostas are super easy. Sedums are super easy. I would do those with no concern whatsoever. Or you would want to wait till about mid September or even early September. There's an Amber Alert. That scared me. Just to let you guys know about the Amber Alert. There's a child, female, 14 years old, last seen in Kitchener. The name is Conlon Kaylee. So you're probably getting that Amber Alert as well. Let's hope that that 14-year-old child that's from Kitchener, Ontario, where it was last seen in Kitchener, Ontario, is safe. And we put prayers and thoughts to make sure that that child does return safely. So once again, best time to transplant is either in early fall or spring, because, and I love early fall for transplanting because you have warm soil temperature, cooler nights, generally a greater frequency of rain. If by chance you guys are doing any shopping, lots of discounts right now at garden centers, any container grown perennials or container grown trees and shrubs, as long as you use, you're around to water and you're watering them deeply, soaking them often to get them established. And I always recommend using transplant fertilizer, even like Quick Start, Miracle Grow's Quick Start fertilizer. You can still plant at this time of year. There's no problem with planting, but transplanting a little bit of a shock on there. Carol is saying, thank you. We'll check these out. We got Anna. Anna is saying, my fig tree needs to be repotted this fall as it's root bound and in hard clay soil. Is there a good way to repot and change out the soil without damaging the plant? So your fig tree, so is that fig as an edible fig or Benjamina ficus, known as a fig tree as well? If it's root bound in hard clay soil, most likely it's probably the fig itself. They're very easy to transplant. If it's an edible fig, they're super easy to transplant. All you're trying to do is when you're going to be removing the pot around it, depends what kind of pot is on there. If it's just in a plastic grower pot, you may want to cut the pot. And generally what you'll find is that soil will be hugging, because it's root bound, around the root mass, so the soil won't even fall out. So just before we go to put it in the other pot, we almost want to take a knife and just almost even cut into the side of that root ball that's around there, because that way we're going to get those root systems to spread out into the new pot that you're going to use. With fig trees, you do want to have something that's going to be almost 50% potting soil and 50% where you're using a garden soil, so a little like a triple mix, a good quality one. That's the way you just heavy up your mix, but you already got your clay base that's in there. So those are some ways to do it. So a good way to repot and change up the soil without damaging the plant is making sure that you're loosening up that root ball a bit so those roots spread out. That's the most thing. Super key. But I guarantee you when you go to remove it out of the pot, it's either going to be really hard to get it off the pot, or you're just going to have to cut the pot off. That's there. So we got that. Supoff is saying good evening. Good evening to you as well this evening. Debbie Bubby. I've been to Two Sisters as well. Love it. I'm in Ajax. Yes, I agree with you about the Rosa Sharon in spring. Yes, indeed. The Rosa Sharon, beautiful plant in bloom now, but they don't look good in spring. Carol is saying, can I prune my lupins now? There are brown sections. So with your lupins, what you want to do is it depends on what you want. You can either remove and deadhead some of those seed heads that are there, the flower heads that are spent, just if it's not looking as if attractive, but you can leave them on, because if you leave them on, it's going to drop the seed, and that's going to be more lupins for next year. So can I prune my lupins now? It's up to you. But if you want that to be a thicker, more vibrant area, I would leave the seed heads on, even though it's maybe even selectively remove a few, but leave a bunch on too. So then that way it will improve the overall look, but you'll still have some seeds that are down there. Andrea, good evening, Frankie. Your vast knowledge is helping me by helping customers with their questions. Oh, that's amazing. That's the whole idea, guys, is that we're here to help out. And, those people and like people like yourself, Andrea, if you guys are creating garden businesses, and there's no bad question in the world of gardening. And there's going to be many things that you do not know, because each and every year we have new varieties, but each and every year we have new challenges, like the box tree moth. Wiping out boxwoods, that's a new challenge. So we always have to share our knowledge base and try to inform and try to inspire. And gardening is a journey. So I'm glad that I'm helping you out with your journey here as well. Diane, my lawn is being taken over with crabgrass. It would be crabgrass. Help. It's really bad right now. So crabgrass is an annual weed that germinates by seed. So at this time of the year, what we're trying to do is to make your lawn as thick as possible, because if there is no soil that a seed can touch, we're not going to get crabgrass that will germinate. So right now, if you have areas where you have in your lawn, there's bare patches, the crabgrass seed will actually be broadcasted and then land on there and will germinate and you'll get more crabgrass. So hand removing the crabgrass is important, but when you hand remove crabgrass, it's important to remove it and immediately put it into a plastic container or something that's not gonna, you're not gonna walk across. So you remove it and you walk across and you're spreading the seed all around. Best time to control crabgrass is in early spring when really we're just seeing the snow melt and we're all of a sudden starting to see a forsythia bloom, say for instance. So it's still pretty chilly outside. That is a period of time when the grass seed is dormant, that annual grass seed is dormant. Then you put down something like a Scott's Turf Builder. Their weed and feed with corn gluten will actually coat those seeds and not allow them to germinate. So there'll be a 6-week period. So those seeds will be coated. We actually then, after 6 weeks, put some more grass seed down, thicken the lawn. The biggest and greatest way that you can benefit and help your lawn from weed growth in the summer, raise those mower blades up. Raise them up to a 4. And because when we're under hot temperatures, our longer grass, it'll shade out weed seeds and not allow those to germinate, but also keep the roots of your grass cool out there as well. Susan Rose, good day, Susan. Good evening from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. Hey, out there on the Atlantic coast. Why do rhododendrons in the province seem to do better than the ones I have in my house in Ontario? The key is really the environment. So the environment that you have in the Atlantic coast, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, is you have an incredibly humid area. So we actually have a lot of moisture in the area that's there. Rhododendrons actually adore having a little bit of humidity, dampness. You know how damp it is when you're out there in the winter in Atlantic Canada. That dampness in the winter prevents moisture loss. So in Ontario, we have actually sunnier skies. We have drier winter weather. And as you know, in Ontario, often when you go outside in winter for an extended period of time, you start to, your lips get cracked, you need chapstick, your skin feels really dry. That's moisture loss. So that rhododendron, which is a broadleaf evergreen, that moisture is taken away from it, and that will impact the overall health of the rhododendron. So hardiness zones could even be similar, but the dampness, the saturation of humidity in the air is so important for a rhododendron to thrive. What we can do in Ontario to try to help it out and reduce the little bit of moisture loss is use something that's called like an antidesiccant. And an antidesiccant is something that we can spray in fall on broadleaf evergreens like azaleas and rhododendrons that will almost seal them up a little bit and reduce the amount of moisture loss during the winter, reducing winter burn. So I hope I answered that question for you there too. Joyce Clark, good evening. Frankie from Peterborough, good evening. Some of my leaves of my honeysuckle have like brown trails. What bug is doing this, please? I'm having an awful time with Japanese beetles on everything, even my Boston ferns. Not going to call, let's see what the rest of that. Not going to plant any calla lilies next year. Japanese beetles have been bad this year, or the June bug. If you have them, it might be a good idea to apply a grub control, like Grub Be Gone this fall onto your lawn. That will make sure that there is no grubs, because those Japanese beetles, they're flying around, they're having sex, they're eating your plants, and they're laying eggs. And those eggs would be grubs, and those grubs, if in your lawn, will then eat some of your lawn, and you'll have skunks and things in the spring digging up your lawn. So a grub control is one thing. Second thing to do is in terms of the Japanese beetles, using plants that are more resistant to Japanese beetles. So maybe next year, skipping canna lilies because we've had a couple bad seasons with the Japanese beetles. If we have a colder winter, that's going to help us out. The little brown trails that you see in your honeysuckle often can be caused by a leaf miner. So if it's in the interior of the leaf and it's a trail in the interior of the leaf, it's a leaf miner. Leaf miners are hard to control because they're in the interior of the leaf. So even using an insecticidal soap like a Bug Be Gone, because they're in the interior, you spray, it doesn't really get to them that's there. So really what we have to firmly determine is what type of insect it is. So what I would encourage you, Joyce, my email is Frankie with an IE, Frankie@frankieflowers.com. Send me an email of a picture of those leaves, and then I can determine exactly what it is and kind of help out a better control. So we'll figure that out. Like leaf miners are really hard to control. Often when we would have leaf miners in the past and we would be using, and it would be on birch, we'd be using something, it was a chemical called Saigon 2E, which was a soil drench. And then it was just systemic, meaning the plant would actually take the insecticide up and it would go into the plant, and that would actually take care of leaf miner. But that, with the cosmetic pesticide ban, is no longer available. We got Sandra. Sandra, thank you for sharing all your information. Hello from St. Catharines, Ontario. Amazing. Monica, which is saying, when is the best time to plant roses? So roses, it depends on the variety of rose. Floribunda roses, hybrid teas, grandifloras, they tend to do better when they're planted in spring. But Rosa rugosa, which is your shrub roses, your David Austin roses, many even Griffin Buck, some of the knockout roses, those roses can be planted now pretty easily as long as you're around to water and into fall. So, and I would really, if you're looking at roses, I would encourage you more so to go towards things like a knockout rose. Knockout rose is it's not going to give you that beautiful cut rose that you have at where you're going to your flower shop, but it's a beautiful looking plant that's disease insect resistant, really easy for winter care. So check out knockout roses. Knockout roses are really good. Debbie, who's saying me again. We planted lime split leaf elder in our front yard a few years ago. I was so healthy for a couple of years. Suddenly all the leaves have dropped and died. Should I try again, or could it be in the area of the problem? The elders, there can be an elder borer. So the elder borer can actually be the one that's kind of killing off that elder on you. So I would love and encourage you, just go on Google, look up elder borer, and borer is spelled B-O-R-E-R, and just see if the way that your plant died back, it was a borer, and maybe it would be a better decision to plant something instead of that. But there are, if you're looking for something that has, that nice chartreuse type foliage, there's spireas, but they don't get as big. They're not as interesting as that. It depends in terms of your light that's in this area. There's Cornus Cuso dogwood, a beautiful flowering dogwood, which is one that's really quite nice as well. We got Anna, who's saying thank you. You are welcome as well. We got Sandy, who is giving a shout out. Hi, Frankie. Hope you had fun at Muskoka Bay. They have an amazing welcoming gardens. They do Muskoka Bay Resort in Gravenhurst, an amazing, beautiful property, not on the water, but it's got golf. It's got some other things, but it's just absolutely stunning. Their gardens in front of their hotel is really great, quite well. And I have some friends that are involved in really the operations of Muskoka Bay, Deerhurst Resort, and Horseshoe Resort. So a shout out to all those guys at Freed Properties as well. Elizabeth Fergus, hi Frankie. How do you get rid of crabgrass on your lawn? I just answered the question. So if you just go back on the little podcast that we're doing here, the Q&A, you'll see, once again, crabgrass on your lawn, an annual weed that germinates by seed. Getting to it early in spring is key, but you can hand remove right now. And in spring, what you're going to be using is a Weed Be Gone. No, forgive me, you're going to be using, it's Scott's Turf Builder, Weed and Feed with corn gluten. We got another question here. Kathy, my rose didn't flower. So if we're not seeing blooms on flowering plants like roses, it's either they're not getting enough sun. Sometimes if a rose has flowered many years, you actually haven't realized that a lot of overhead trees have grown and now are shading out. So it's not getting enough sun. Improper pruning, or if you're fertilizing, sometimes if you're using too high nitrogen. However, with roses, that shouldn't be the case because roses like a little bit more nitrogen, a little bit more acidity in the soil. So Kathy, I would be really looking at how much sun it's getting. It needs at least 6 hours of direct afternoon sun for it to do well and to bloom this well out there. We got another question this evening from Voila. Beautiful. Hi, Frankie. I planted purple zebra tomatoes that you suggested, and they are absolutely delicious. That's the purple Cherokee. The purple Cherokee tomato, amazing. But if you did the purple zebras, they're amazing too. I got some in my garden too. But my plants are over 7 feet tall with a lot of branches. How can you trim the extra branches off without damaging the plant? Don't be afraid. Any of the branches that are actually growing out of the way, remove them. Any of the bottom stems, I would actually start to remove bottom stems. And don't be fearful of removing. You're not going to damage the plant as long as you're not cutting into the main stem. You'll actually find, even if when you go to bend some of those branches down, you'll see that they actually quite easily snap off. So doing some suckering and pruning is no problem whatsoever. So if you need to thin them out, there's no problem with that whatsoever. So, and mostly with the purple Cherokee tomatoes and the heirloom variety tomatoes that grow to that size, most of the fruit starts to, at this time of the year, starts to develop on the top of the plant. T-Bone saying, good evening, Frankie. Had to believe that the seed onions are starting to lay down this early. Also spotted bald-headed eagle at the back of my property by the river. He's in the Holland Marsh. We have been spouting those. The reason why we talk about the seeded onions are your Spanish onions. When you start to see the tops falling over, that usually happens into at least late August. Things are 10 days earlier because we've been so hot and it was so early, and even the farmers got out there a little earlier. The seed onions are laying over. For myself, when I used to see the onions laying over, I knew that school was almost going to start. So that was always my indication that summer was almost over. I'm going to do this as my last question, guys, this evening, because we're at 30 minutes. Hi, Frankie. I have a small worms or caterpillars eating my hibiscus plant. Tried spraying with the soap and did nothing. Any help, please? Wasaga Beach. If they are worms and or caterpillars, use BTK, which is Bacillus thuringiensis. That'll take care of the caterpillars for you. So check out BTK to take care of those, and that should totally take care of you. For those that joined this evening, I hope you learned a little. I hope you maybe even laughed a little. I hope maybe I inspired you a little. If you have any other questions, please check out my website, frankieflowers.com, frankieflowers.com. I'll have a new newsletter coming out this weekend on the harvest. It's going to give you tips and tricks on the harvest and just even a really great recipe. My recipe of using peaches and tomatoes together. Amazing. Peaches and tomatoes together. All you have to do is go to frankieflowers.com. You'll see the little thing that pops up to sign up for the newsletter. I'd love it if you did because it'd be great to keep in contact with you. I put about 5 newsletters out a year, and they're always full of tips and tricks, so it's not too overwhelming. And if you subscribe and then all of a sudden you don't like it, you can always go to the bottom of the newsletter and unsubscribe. So for all those, health, happiness, and keep blooming. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early on Breakfast Television. You'll see me there at 6 a.m. talking to you all about the weather. Cooler week ahead. Average temperatures this week in the mid